It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. Today, we welcome a former basketball star turned business mogul. He played for the University of Louisville, where he led the Cardinals to the 1975 NCAA Final Four. He was also a two-time Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year in 1974 and 75. He then spent 12 seasons in the NBA with the Milwaukee Bucks and the LA Clippers. He played in 711 games for the Bucks, which is the most in franchise history.
Milwaukee leads by 1. Junior Bridgeman. 34-31. Bridgeman dunks it. Crowd loves that. They're on their feet again.
And late last year, his media company helped resurrect the famed Ebony magazine with the purchase of the African-American publication for $14 million. He's Junior Bridgeman, and he joins this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN right now with your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. We bring you the biggest guests, great analysis, and the hottest sports stories in the nation's capital and beyond. And we bring it to you live. Welcome to this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN. Here's your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream edition of Listen In with KNN. Presented right here on our home station, Fox Sports Radio, 96.9 FM and 1340 AM. With me, your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. I appreciate everyone joining us. As we know, the NBA is well underway. Lots going on in the world. And so I wanted to bring in someone to help me break down the latest and greatest in the NBA, talk some business, and of course, have some fun. So joining me on today's show for the very first time is none other than Junior Bridgeman. Full name, Ulysses Lee, Junior Bridgeman. He is a former University of Louisville star, so shout out to the Cardinals, as well as a former Milwaukee Buck and a Los Angeles Clippers player. And now he's doing so much in the business world. We'll just call him a business mogul for all purposes' sake. We're going to hear from him, his story. And again, so honored to have him. So without further ado, please help me welcome none other than Junior Bridgeman to the show. Junior, how are you today?
Good. It's a pleasure to be here. Absolutely. Just looking forward to just having some fun with you.
Yeah, we're going to have lots of fun, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule, Junior. I know how busy you are. You're doing a million different things. Shout out to Dr. Lloyd Walton for bringing us together. He was a great guest on the show, Junior. So I'll say the bar set high for you, but he told me you will probably break that bar and set it even higher. I like to start with the wellness check, Junior. How are you feeling? How are you doing? I hope COVID has not impacted you or your family at all.
No, we've been pretty fortunate about that. Everybody has stayed healthy, so feeling pretty good. Just wish and hope that things will get back to whatever the new normal is pretty soon. So
yeah, we're really hoping for it. I mean, it's the craziest thing. Like, and I don't want to already cut into your basketball career, but could you imagine even playing in these circumstances, Junior, when you were playing? Like, it's crazy, right? We have no fans or little fans. You have to take safety precautions everywhere. We've seen games postponed, games canceled even, just because, we're all trying to figure out how to defeat COVID. And it's changed the world as we know. It's like you said, I don't even know what normal is anymore, Junior.
Absolutely. And I was thinking about that as a player, how it would be. And ever since, elementary school, I can't remember a time when we didn't play in front of fans. And so watching the game, and especially the playoffs last year, coming out and no fans, even though they had the piped in, sound effects, but that's still not the same as having the fans there and interacting with them during the game. I think LeBron said that also. It would have been a challenge, and my hats off to the players in the NBA. I thought they did a great job in pulling it off and making it exciting last year.
Yeah, it definitely was exciting. We have a new champion, and you talked about LeBron, so we have to congratulate our guy LeBron James. But we're going to talk about basketball. But first, I want to start off with you, Junior, with your beginnings, right? So growing up in East Chicago, Indiana, let's talk about it. As I understand it, your father, Ulysses, was a second-generation steelworker. So talk about what it was like growing up in the background, and then we're going to talk about where you are today.
Well, the thing about growing up in East Chicago, Indiana, back at that time was pretty much, I'd say, 70–80% of the people worked in the steel mills. And so it wasn't a great life. It was hard work. You didn't get paid a lot of money, but you were able to feed your family, put it that way. So all the kids that grew up were pretty much in the same boat. So we didn't think of one having more or less than the other one. And the big plus back at that time was it was a melting pot for a number of different kinds of people from, Serbia, Croatia, Hispanic, Puerto Rico, Mexico. I mean, I went to school with people from all over the world, for the most part. So you never looked at anybody any differently. You all were the same, and that was a great advantage, I think, to growing up in a society where everybody got along, and basketball just happened to be that one thing that everybody wanted to do and be a part of.
Yeah, like you said, everybody wanted to be a part of it. It's great to learn that you grew up like in a mixing pot, right? So you grew up with so many different cultures and religions. So I'm sure what you do today is nothing new to you because you've always been around that. And it seems great that basketball was kind of that escape for you, it sounds like. And then you just so happened to be really good at it, Junior.
Well, it kind of developed. I mean, I didn't really. There were so many people wanting to play, and so many players in our community that I didn't really get a chance to play until my senior year. And we had a real good team. We were undefeated, won the state championship in Indiana, and got a chance to go on and get a scholarship and play at Louisville. But I would say I was a late bloomer, as they say, and just fortunate to get a chance and to excel and have the opportunity to play in the NBA with Dr. Lloyd Walton for a number of years. So
yes, and I'm glad you touched on that. I think that's a great message to people out there. If you're a late bloomer, it's okay. You still were able to reach that highest level of basketball, and I appreciate you touching on that. And I'm glad you touched on that high school, Washington High School, as you said, going undefeated that senior season, and then winning the Indiana State Championship. Talk about what that was like for you. I'm sure that's an incredible experience. That's something athletes dream of, Junior. Not everyone gets to reach that level, but to reach that in high school, representing the whole state, what was that like?
Well, it was a dream come true. I mean, ever since elementary school, I remember laying on the living room floor and listening to the high school at that time, even though I was in elementary school, playing in the high school tournament and lose. They lost in the finals, and I remember going to school. The guy walking to school the next morning, and we're saying, when we get there, we're never going to lose. We're not going to let anybody beat us, and that was just how you were indoctrinated into basketball, and how big it was for the community at a young age, and to win. The whole community, East Chicago, Indiana, was not a big community, maybe 26,000 people at the time. But everybody was into the high school basketball team. And so for us to win the championship and more to go undefeated was a dream come true. It was something that everybody felt a part of. And so at a young age, unfortunately, it made it feel like you were important. And I don't know if that was good or bad, but you felt like, you can go conquer the world because we won the state championship in Indiana. So,
yeah. It's a big feeling, especially when you're so young. Like you said, I'm sure everyone was throwing out the red carpet for you all to do such a thing, right?
Yeah, we were invited everywhere and to radio shows. And ironically, they tried to get the Illinois State Championship team to play us that year. And that was Quinn Buckner and the Bats boys and all of that. And we had played against them in the summer times kind of growing up, but the two high school associations would not sanction the game, and it never happened. But it would have been a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, it would have been a lot of fun to say the least. But you got to have a lot of fun, as you said, going on to the University of Louisville, getting a scholarship, playing 3 varsity seasons there, playing under head coach Jenny Crum. I mean, you became the focal point of their attack, and you won some awards there, right? The Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year twice, and then that Final Four. How special that was! 1975 Final Four. I mean, you guys joined great programs, right? UCLA, Syracuse, and Kentucky. You played with the All-American and Alan Murphy. Like, just take us back through that experience, right? Because that's something, I mean, in high school, you had this great experience. Then you go to college and get to play in a Final Four. Again, something that most players dream of doing, and you went on to do it. A guy that you described yourself as a late bloomer, accomplishing all of these great things. We'll talk about that Louis basketball team and that program and how it kind of helped you develop your skills as a basketball player and a man off the court.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that made playing in college and getting to the Final Four even more special was the year before. Well, let me go back. On my high school team, we had a gentleman by the name of Tim Stoddard and another one by the name of Pete Turkovich. And Tim Stoddard played for North Carolina State, and along with David Thompson, and they won the championship in 1974, the NCAA. Turkovich had won it as a sophomore with UCLA. He went to UCLA. So in 1975, when I got there with Louisville, it was my turn to win. I mean, the other two guys had already won, and we played UCLA in the Saturday afternoon game, and it was a great game, great high school game. Denny Crum against his old, mentor John Wooden, and we lost in overtime on a last-second shot, and cost us the chance of playing in the finals. And if we had played in the finals, we would have played Kentucky because they beat Syracuse earlier, and at that time Louisville and Kentucky did not play at all. The two schools never played against each other, so it would have been the first time would have been in the national championship, which would have been a whole nother series of as a state ready for it. There's a lot of underlying issues going on, but it didn't happen, and we lost, and obviously it doesn't bother me to today, as you can tell. Still remember every second of that game, and then I got to play with some of the UCLA players. Played with Dave Myers at pros, and Marcus Johnson and Richard Washington, and we became great friends. And that's lasted even to today. So.
That is great. Those friendships, those lifelong friendships, like you said, that you build on last. I know that was tough. Look, we all remember those games that coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? We'll never know.
Absolutely.
We'll never know. Obviously, you have a great career. And just when you look back at your career at Louisville Junior, what would you want people to remember most about what you contributed to that great program?
Yeah, I think we were in a lot of ways, kind of the building of the program. When I came as a freshman, it was Denny Crum's first year at the University of Louisville, and they had a good team. He inherited a good team. They went to the Final Four, his rookie year as a coach, and lost to UCLA again. But I think the 3 years that I was there, I think it really established the program and him. The program is one of the top in the country, and he is one of the top coaches in the country. And so, in looking back on it, I think that's what we did. And one of the things I'm probably more proud of is over that time we had 32 seniors, and 28 out of 32 seniors got their degree in 4 years, and that was kind of unheard of at that time. And just kind of shows you that not just the type of basketball player, but the type of young men that he had recruited and we had on the team back then.
Yeah, that speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. We need to hear more of that. We don't get to hear that as much. And like you said, being able to do that, I think that's such an important message, especially to today's youth, because, that degree goes a long way. I'm sure, Junior, you look back, and I'm sure everyone wishes we could all play basketball forever or any sport forever. But, Father Time will catch up with you eventually, right? And it just
eventually.
Right? Yeah, I'll be Tom football field, and even Tom Brady is going to have an ending point. And so I think it's so important to spread that message. And just curious, going from East Chicago, Indiana to Louisville, was that transition easy for you? Did you have any trouble getting acquainted at the university? Because I know that's also a thing, right? You have to get used to in a brand new environment. You can describe your background growing up and how diverse it was. So was it kind of an easy transition for you?
No, it really wasn't because even though I had done well in high school, did well academically, you're still not sure whether or not that prepared you enough for college. And
Mhm.
so coming to the university, you always am I prepared? Am I smart enough? Can I make it through the classes? And you look at all these kids coming from all of these other schools that you don't know about, but they just seem so much more prepared. So you always wondered about that. And not till you get through that first semester and you kind of really the first year you say, I can do this. I can do the homework, I can do the studying, I can pass the test, and then you kind of settle in and realize that even though they might have come from a bigger, better school, but all in all, you've got just as much on the ball as they do.
Yeah, you start to believe in yourself, like you said. It can be
Right.
an adjustment period, especially when you're going to a larger university. I remember my freshman 100 classes, with 400 people. Like you said, you start to just second guess yourself sometimes, right? Because it's new, and you might have been the smartest at your old school, the best player at your old school. Then all of a sudden, you're coming here and kind of having to readjust yourself. And then lo and behold, you had to do that again, right? Once you got to the NBA, getting picked 8th overall by the Los Angeles Lakers in the 1975 draft. But then we all know the trade that happened, right? That sent Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to LA and you to the Milwaukee Bucks. So take me back to that moment, Junior. I'm sure like you weren't even there a week. That happened, right? It gets to your head. I mean, what was going through your mind when that happened? You just get to the NBA and all of a sudden, boom, you get traded.
Well, you want to have the opportunity to play, and I tell people, even if they'd had a team in Alaska and they said you have to go there, you'd have said fine. I just want to have the opportunity to play. But what I remember most is even before the trade, going out and meeting with the Lakers organization, and it was a different ownership, different group than what they have today. But there had been a rumor that Kareem was going to go to the Lakers, and
Mm-hmm.
so during the negotiations, we asked the owner management, is there any truth to this rumor about Kareem being traded from Milwaukee to the Lakers? And I remember to this day looking with you straight in your eyes and saying, well, there might be something to that, maybe not. But when we draft somebody, we draft them to be a Laker, and we want to be a Laker forever. And we drafted you to be a Laker. And I said, oh well, that's great. And a week and a half later, I was traded to Milwaukee. So
What
you
happened to your
just
word?
it lets you know that the business of the game was more important to a lot of people. And looking back, if I had a chance to get Kareem and trade, myself along with 3 other players, would I have done the same thing? Probably so, but I don't think I would have said, when we draft somebody, we expect them to be a Laker forever. So that wasn't necessary, and kind of gave you a really bad feeling and bad taste in your mouth looking
Yeah.
back.
Especially like you said, when somebody looks you in your eye and tells you something. Because look, LA and Milwaukee are 2 very different places, right? And 2 different
Absolutely.
organizations.
Yeah,
Like it's a
yeah.
little colder in Milwaukee. But you look at that, like you said, and I'm sure it was hard for you, especially because you were so young and brand new to the NBA, right? So the trade happens. You go to Milwaukee. I'm gonna take a question from my mom, actually, who's tuning in and watching. Junior wants to know, did you experience any racial tension while at Milwaukee while playing for the Bucks?
We really did not, but they pretty much shielded you from getting too involved in the community. By
Mhm.
that, let me give you an example. When you came up to Milwaukee, they had somebody to take you around to help you find an apartment place to live. They kind of shepherd you around to where you go for this and that. So they kind of took care of you and didn't let you experience the real community, so to speak. But the one thing I will tell you that was somewhat scary and interesting. So I got my apartment, I've got a TV, and I'm sitting there watching TV, and a commercial comes on with this gentleman running for mayor of Milwaukee, and he's sitting behind a desk. He has a full Nazi uniform on
Oh,
and a Nazi flag behind him, and I'm like,
wow.
where am I? How could that even be? And he's running for mayor, and this, is in the 70s, and it just shocked me. But that probably was an indication as I got more involved and knew more about Milwaukee. I came to understand, and even today, I read a report where Milwaukee is one of the most segregated cities in the whole United States. And as looking back on it, I could see all of that.
Yeah. And it's just sad that it's still that way. We're talking about the 70s, and now we're fast forwarding, like you said, in multiple cities like that right across America where people are still living in these segregated areas. So again, you're young, you go to Milwaukee and you start playing for the Bucks. Of course, as they say, really the rest is history, because some great seasons that you got to have with the Bucks in Milwaukee. I understand, as I know it, you pretty much played sixth man for the most of your career, but the Torch, I love that nickname. Light up teams. And then they even retired your jersey, right, back in 1988. So when you look back at your career playing for the Milwaukee Bucks, just talk about what it was like and just how you were able to find such success with the organization, because you hold the record now for playing the most games for that organization. So I hope that speaks volumes to you, especially in an era where loyalty is not so talked about, Junior, because we see guys just chasing rings now.
Absolutely, and the loyalty is we used to think it was a one-way street. We were loyal more to the team, maybe the team, but now you're absolutely right. Guys are going here and there wherever they think they have a chance to win, and loyalty seems to be something nobody talks about or even concerned about. But I was fortunate in Milwaukee to play a long time, but even more than that, to play with some really good players. And probably more important, to play with some really good people and people, teammates that you enjoyed being around. I remember almost after every road game when we would get back to the hotel and I say, okay, we're going to go to dinner, meet in the lobby in 15 minutes. And it'd be 5 or 6 guys would get together and all go to dinner together. And I don't know if players still do that kind of thing today. I kind of think they don't. But probably the biggest testament to that is the fact that we're still friends. Dr. Lloyd Walton, still talk to him, Sidney Moncrief, Bob Lanier, Marcus Johnson, Brian Winters, and Quinn Buckner, on and on. We still are in communication after all these years. And it's a friendship that developed from playing days and kind of everybody in trenches together back in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and you just touched on some huge names that you got to play with, and just building that culture and that organization. And we look at the organization now, Junior, and what Milwaukee is, right? You look at a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, you look at Chris Middleton. When you look at the Bucks organization, you're kind of proud of that culture that you all set. And are you proud where the organization currently stands?
Yeah, it was a hard work, great work ethic, and I think you even see that when I watch the games and go to the games. You see, Giannis and Chris Middleton. The people appreciate the effort, and even if you only play a few minutes and give it your all in all, I mean, in some cases they appreciate that just as much as they do the big stars, and so that is what always made it special to be there and made you feel appreciated. And I mean, and it wasn't just the Bucks. I mean, you look at all of their professional sports teams. I mean, the people really appreciate the effort. They appreciate you being there. Yeah, they like to win, as all fans do, but it's a little bit different there in Milwaukee. A little bit deeper feeling especially for the players that spend a lot of time and most of their career there. You almost become endeared to the fans, so to speak.
Yeah, they ride for their own in Milwaukee. They love you all. They appreciate y'all. And again, it was an era of NBA loyalty that we're not seeing right now.
Absolutely.
One of our faithful fans of the show. What was the toughest thing mentally and physically to adjust to when you were playing in the NBA?
The toughest part was the travel and game schedule that we had then, and the fact that you had to perform at a certain level whether you were tired or not. And now let's go back. At that time, we played 3 games in a row sometime, and you might have played 3 games in 3 different cities, and we traveled commercial. So, and the rule was, let's say we played in Chicago against the Bulls tonight, and we had a game tomorrow night in Washington, against the the Bullets at that time. The rule was you had to take the first flight going to Washington. So if the first flight left at 5:30, you had to get up and be on that airplane, and that just had a big effect on you physically and mentally over the whole course of the season. And that's why you saw a lot of guys, I think injuries increased more toward the end of the season, and guys maybe didn't play their best basketball toward the end of the season just because physically you were mentally and physically drained back at that time.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Hearing you say that makes me think about this load management conversation, Junior, that we have now. It sounds like you're not a fan of it because you guys just had to play, and then flying commercially, taking those early flights. Come on, when I come to India, that's not happening now, Junior.
I'm talking to some other players from the old time that they don't really understand it. Training camp is nothing like what training camp was back then, and they've got food is prepared for you before the game, after practice, on and on and on. And yet, the guys can't play 3 nights in a row. I mean, fine. It probably saved some injuries, but you don't get a lot of love from some of the old players. And that's what they should do. They just think, guys need to be a little bit tougher. So.
We see it more and more happening now. We see breaks for all types of reasons now. So definitely to say, it's a different game, right? It's a completely different game. Because, if we talk about the differences, we can even talk about, how they say, I like old school basketball, Junior. It was more physical, right? We don't have refs all the time blowing whistles. Are you just a fan of the game now? Do you think it's moved in the right direction, Junior?
I still watch it. I'm a fan of certain things that certain players can do. Obviously, you see LeBron and at his size and his quickness and agility, and you've got to appreciate that. Or you watch a Steph Curry that could, shoot as fast as he does from as far away as he does and as accurately as he does. But I think Oscar Robertson made a statement that, if he was playing against a Steph Curry, there's no way he would get that open. And if you go back to the times when you could put a hand on a player, what we call hand check, you could control the directions that he goes, and you could guard him a lot closer. Or you go back to the days when they had the Bob Laniers, and you had the Patrick Ewings and people like that in center. You weren't driving to the basket. Even my rookie year, and I knew Wes Unseld. He played at Louisville. I knew him before I got into the NBA, and so we're playing Washington, and I make a pass. I'm a guard. I cut down the lane, and he hits me with his forearm, and I want to just double over, but I said, maybe I got to be tough. But he almost knocks the air out of me. And he looks at me and says, "Don't come down the middle," And that was the mentality back then. You didn't. If you came down the middle trying to go to basket, you were going to get somebody was going to hit you. And now I see guys drive all the way to the basket from the 3-point line and lay it up. And I'm like, how does that happen? But then the game is different. It's more spread out. It's wide open, and I guess the scoring is better. And maybe that's what the fans want to see nowadays.
Yeah, definitely high scoring. You're talking to someone based in DC where they're asking for our Wizards to play defense, right? So it's just a very different game, different mindset. You talked about the center position even, and just how that position has changed, right? Like now if you're a big man, you need to be able to shoot that 3 ball, right? Like it's expected. And it's completely changed, right? It's not your old school center that's just staying there protecting the paint, right? It's like players now, you have to literally learn how to do everything. And now every big man, Junior, wants to play point, right?
Yeah, and I look at and there's some great big men that can do a lot of things with the ball, and you appreciate that. But can you imagine Kareem out, trying to shoot a 3-pointer, when you had the sky hook that was unstoppable? So, the game's changed. Yeah, fans seem to enjoy it, so I just kind of go along with that. But I'd love to see a skilled big man like Elijah Wan with the footwork that could do the things that he did, or even Lanier with the moves he had around the basket, but you don't see them as Kevin McHale, from Boston. You don't see that anymore, and I think that's a shame. I think the game misses something there, or has lost something.
Yeah, it's definitely a different game. I think now, it just seems like everything's all about points, right? You just
Yeah,
don't have
absolutely.
a
Yep.
game, but
Yep.
I think it's the way the world is going. Staying on your basketball career, you talked about how much the fans rode for you in Milwaukee. I thought it was great when you got inducted into the Wisconsin Athletic Hall of Fame. That was back in 1999. What was that moment like for you? You talked about how special it was playing in Milwaukee, but to be forever cemented, right, in Wisconsin sports history, what did that mean to you, Junior Bridgeman?
Well, it was what made it special for me was, I spent my career. Don Nelson came to me and asked me to come off the bench. And, no one goes into the league thinking that they're going to be a six man or come off the bench. Everybody wants to be a starter and everything that comes with being a starter. And he explained that he had played that role in Boston and how important that role would be in how he was designing the team to the success of the team. So, I eventually accepted it and did that. But most of the time, when you're coming off the bench, you're not going to be recognized or get the accolades, quote unquote, as some of the starters do. So for me and then going back to for the fans to appreciate what you did, that's what made it special. And to be inducted, as I said, talking about the Milwaukee fans, they appreciated the hard work, they appreciated what you did when you did. And so that's what made being inducted into the Wisconsin Hall of Fame very, very special for me.
Yeah, nothing like it. And again, getting into any Hall of Fame, I think, is really special. But like you said, especially when you understand the fans understand your role and the role that you played, and just showed you that love back. It means a lot because we understand all the work that you all put on the basketball court, right? You put up with a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and everything. And so to have that, I know will forever have a special place in your heart. We're going to talk business soon, but I can't talk basketball without talking about your years with the Los Angeles Clippers. You played 2 years with them after getting traded from Milwaukee. So you get to LA, not the Lakers, but we get to the Clippers. So now let's talk about what that was like playing for the Los Angeles Clippers organization.
Well, the Clippers organization was still in search of, put it that way. And you say, well, what's that mean? I think they were in search of trying to get their own identity in LA. They were in search of trying to establish themselves against, say, the Lakers, which, have been there forever and really were a part of Los Angeles. And so, you're not going to just move and take their position, so to speak. So we start from that point, trying to establish ourselves. And then when you look on paper, we had Norm Nixon, Marcus Johnson, Derek Smith, Bill Walton, Harvey Catchings, James Donaldson, Michael Cage, on and on. If you looked on paper, we should have been as competitive as any team in the NBA. Mm-hmm. But it's a funny thing about when you go to LA and you're amongst, the stars, athletic or movie or music. Everybody wants to be that star. And so that kept us from being a good basketball team because we could, guys, it was the team or individual or team, and we could never get to the team aspect, which is what it took to win. And consequently, we're never as good as we should have been, never won as many games as we should have won, especially when you looked at the talent that we had on paper.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like you said, I'm glad you kept it honest and real, right? You got to a place where everybody wanted to be a star. Everybody can't be a star on a basketball team, right? Everybody has a role to play. It is hard. We see it in the NBA even. I'm not going to call out, but we've seen some diva-ish behavior because people want to be that star of the team, but it's also meant for different people. And I think it is hard sometimes to adjust to that. And like you said, you talked about it. Being in LA, you're amongst Hollywood and stars. You have stars at your games, right? Like you want to be that person. So I'm sure it was hard to kind of find that role. And then, like you said, playing in the shadows of the Lakers organization. And I'd say even now, Junior, the Clippers still play that role, right? Like it hasn't changed much because you're playing from this top organization. But then, you get to it, you play for the Clippers. Talk about just when you knew it was time to just hang it all up, Junior, and saying goodbye to basketball. Was it hard?
It's still hard because it's even though it mentally, when in the back of your mind when it's time, you lose a half a step, the moves you used to make that you could count on, now you make them, and the defensive player still standing in front of you. So you kind of know, it's time to go do something else. But, you've been playing this game ever since you were in elementary school.
Yeah.
And you've put in, I always quote the 10,000 hours from Malcolm Gladwell to be good at anything, and you've put more than 10,000 hours of practice into this game. It's become a part of you, and it's tough to walk away because there's nothing else that you're going to do that's going to give you the immediate accolades, immediate attention, immediate feedback as playing the game does. I mean, you knew in 48 minutes whether you won or lost. You knew whether you did a good job or not. You knew what the fans appreciated, and you can't replace that. And that's why I think the bigger star you have, the harder it is to walk away from the game because you can't replace that, or it takes time to replace it. Finding yourself and success in doing something else, and that's not easy to do for a lot of players once they leave the game.
Yeah, like you said, it's something you dedicated your life to, your career to. And, when you're building up, you don't think about the end usually, right? You're just thinking about building to that point and you want to play it forever. But life has this crazy way of showing you sometimes, you know what, you're going to have to switch paths. Like you said, when you try to get that step ahead and the defender's right there, it's kind of like, all right, well, I got to try something different, or I'm just going to have to hang it all up. But then the great thing about you, and I think this is something that's hard for a lot of players, is that you kind of have been preparing, I feel like, for life after basketball. Because as I understand it, sometimes in your off seasons, you did something that was different, Junior. You were working at a local Wendy's restaurant, right? Learning the business inside and out. And I have to be honest with you, Junior, I feel like so many players now would just be, I guess the word is proud. They'd be too proud, right, to do something like that. But for you, I know it was different. You guys were obviously making a different amount of income, right, at the time. It's not like these crazy contracts we see now. But talk about that process. How do you go from playing in the NBA to then spending off seasons at Wendy's? And then you went deeper. You were just working there. You were learning the business model of Wendy's. So talk about that. Was like, I think this is an important message to athletes out there because, again, life will show you sometimes it's going to end. As much as we love seeing great players, you can't play the game forever.
Well, and it's all about preparation and preparing yourself for that time is going to come when you can't play anymore. And yet, we didn't make nearly the amount of money that guys. So in the back of our mind, from maybe your first, second year, you're always thinking to yourself, what am I going to do when I can't do this anymore? Because I still have to make a living. And
Right.
So it wasn't, I over the summers, I worked at Howard Johnson's for two off seasons. I worked for an insurance consulting firm, and when I knew that I had the chance to become involved with Wendy's, you said, okay, well, what's this really mean? And you thought back, well, how'd you get to be a good basketball player? And it was going out and working on what you were trying to do. And if you were going to be in this business, you needed to learn and everything you could about it. You needed to go do it and not just rely upon somebody to do it for you just because you happen to play basketball for a period of time. So it wasn't difficult for me, but it was difficult for some fans to see me working at a Wendy's. A true story. I'm tell you the name of the store. I'm there, and this lady comes in. And I'm at the coordinator's position, which all you means is you get whatever they ordered on a tray and you kind of push it to them, thank them. And she looks up and looks down and looks up and kind of, gets her food and walks away. And true story, I'm going in the car the next morning, listening to the radio and some show, and they calls in. I just think it's a shame. And they're going, well, what are you talking about? I think it's a shame that these basketball players spend all this time in the NBA, make all this money, and when they stop, the only job they can get is at Wendy's. So, I said, and I heard that, and it just kind of laughed, but,
Wow.
but, she thought, that's all I could do was go get a job, working the front line at Wendy's. And that was, I thought it was funny, but it kind of gave you that mindset of what people thought about players. So
if only she knew. I wish that woman was still that same guy that was at Wendy's. He's kind of doing a lot of cool things now. But to be fair, Junior, I don't know how many times I've walked into Wendy's and seen somebody 6'5" standing inside Wendy's, right? You just don't see that all the time. But it just speaks to how, again, you were preparing for your next life, right? In life after basketball. Because then talk about Wendy's, you found success soon after playing basketball, right? Purchasing 5 Wendy's at first. And you purchased some while still actively playing, right? Or you were still in the league and you purchased 2 more.
Yeah, I got involved with a couple of guys in Chicago while I was still playing. But I didn't purchase the 5 until I had stopped playing, and then it kind of grew from there. We bought the rest of Milwaukee, and then we built some, purchased some, and turn around and you own all these restaurants. But it was never about how many restaurants can you own.
Right.
What we found was as you grew your organization, you were able to promote people, you were able to pay people more, and you give people a better chance in life. And it was as we did that, you just turn around and say, well, how did we get to this number? How did you get to that number? But then you looked around at all the people that you had helped in their life. And that was really the real success about what we did was changing people's lives by allowing them to, enhance what they were doing, make more money, and move into a better position in life.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. And I think the big story here too, though, Junior, is that we're not always learning about investing, right? And kind of next steps. Like we're not always taught that, especially in our elementary schools. I'd say even the school system, right? It's kind of more about what you're doing now. And one of the stories I love that kind of got you into franchising is that breakfast that you had. I think it was at the Hyatt Regency in Oakland, right? With former Milwaukee Bucks owner Jim Fitzgerald. You got to tell us this story. I thought this was great. I won't let you tell it, but he was in the sports section of the paper, right? And he was looking at the Wall Street Journal. So look at the 2 different newspapers there. But talk about that conversation and how it kind of led you into thinking differently and looking at franchising.
Well, and he was asking me, he knew that I wanted to possibly get involved in business. And so we're there, having breakfast, we play tonight. And he says, well, wouldn't it be great if we had the Wall Street Journal a year from now? And so, and I'm, to tell you the truth, I didn't know what he was referring to. I knew the Wall Street Journal at that time didn't have a sports section. I'm saying, why would I even read the Wall Street Journal? But he's talking about, all of the stock prices, what went up, what went down, how much you could make money you could make by having, knowing in the future what's going to happen in the future. And then, he asked me, he said, well, I know you're interested in business. What part of business do you want to get into? And I said, well, business. And that's all. And he kind of did what you did. He laughed and kind of we went on. But, I know he said to himself, he's got a long way to go and a lot to learn here, which I did. At that point. But true story. So.
That's amazing. I mean, just to go from there and again, looking at all you've done, and you talked about the franchise in the restaurants, about Bridgeman Foods Inc., becoming a fast food franchisee, and helping you retire. But then CocaCola, right? 2016, becoming one of only 3 new CocaCola bottlers in the last, 30 years? 40 years.
40 years.
That's
yeah.
Crazy. Like, I mean, when you hear that, you got to talk about that transition and what kind of led you to that. And I will tell you, Coke is one of my favorite sodas.
glad to hear that. And it's about generational. What can we pass down? How can we help the next generation be successful? And when I looked at the restaurant business, I saw people that, maybe it went to the next generation. Maybe it didn't, but that was about as far as most, restaurant owners kind of went. But when I looked at Coca-Cola and in all our restaurants, we were a big customer. We served Coca-Cola everywhere. There were people that were in their 4th and 5th generation bottlers. There were people who went back to 1890. Their family did, bottling and selling Coca-Cola. So, I said, if you ever have the opportunity to do this, this is what would be great to pass down from generation to generation. And we were just very fortunate, very blessed that the opportunity came about. And we were able to become a bottler and a distributor and, in Kansas and in Missouri and Illinois. And it's been great. We've been in now for 4 years and it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun, and we're doing a good job, I hope.
Yes, look, you're still there and doing a great job at it. And I'm so glad you touched on that generational wealth part. I think we talk about the African-American community. That's something that we're trying to build and something that we're trying to get to. And again, we're not always taught that, right? And I think, unfortunately, Junior, I've done so many broke athlete stories, right? Or bad investment stories. Like, I think every media member has done a million of them. I want to do more stories like yours. And this is why I was so excited to get you on this show. But the generational wealth, it's huge. You get to pass that down to your kids and your kids' kids, right? It keeps cycling. And, when you hear the term old money and stuff, that's something a lot of us didn't have the privilege to grow up with, right? We go back to your beginnings, your father being a second generation steel worker, now you being a Coca-Cola bottler. I feel like that's like the wildest dream, like, for you to not only play in the NBA, but then to go on and find success after. So like any advice you have for just NBA players looking to invest, looking to learn more, like Junior, what should they be doing now to prepare for life after basketball?
I when I've had the opportunity through Dr. Walden to talk to the players, I tell them, your job is to become the best player that you can be and to make the most money that you can while playing this game. But your also job is to walk away from this game as financially set for not just you, but for generations after you. And the only way you're going to do that is you have to prepare yourself to be in that position. And that means, not going out and buying the latest watch and diamond watch and the latest this and the latest that and having 7 or 8 different cars. You have to be able to set a plan for I'm only going to spend this much money and the next thing you need is to be conservative. I mean, I said there's nothing wrong with just putting a lot of money in the bank and not taking a lot of interest on it, but you're not losing it either. So and just amassing as much money as you can, and don't just trust somebody to say, well, I'm going to take your money and I'm gonna get you 10% on it or 8% on it and all those kind of things like that. And don't get involved in things that you don't know about and things that you can't control yourself. I said, there's plenty of time, play as long as you can. You'll have plenty of time to invest. You'll have plenty of time to try and buy a business, do all these things, but you do it. Don't rely on somebody else to do it, because that's been the biggest way that guys have lost all their money is making mistakes and giving it to somebody, or losing it on their own by bad habits or things like that. So I say it's up to you. There's no reason why in today's game that guys shouldn't leave the game with so much money that they can pass that down to the next generation if they focus on that and don't focus on buying the boat and buying 9 cars and all those kind of things like that.
Right. And let's be honest, look, at the end of the day, you can't take all that stuff with you anyway, all that materialistic stuff. But what you can do is leave stuff for your family. That's how you create wealth. And, one of my favorite quotes is Shaquille O'Neal talking about, one day he was in a business room and everybody was talking about him and his money. And he was the only one not talking. And he's like, that's when I had to learn that I needed to learn my own for my business and my money. And lo and behold, we see what he's doing. And I think this advice speaks to everyone. So I want to go to this question. What's the most important business lesson you can pass on to anyone? I think you kind of touched on it. Of course, us average people, we can't just buy yachts and boats, Junior, but, just spending money wisely so we can all just make financial decisions, I'd say, especially for the Black community where we are looking to create our own wealth.
And the other thing that we don't understand is that there are a number of different ways to access money. And one of the biggest problems that we have is lack of access to capital to allow us to do things. But in today's world, especially after, the unfortunate incidents with George Floyd and, Breonna Taylor, companies and private groups have put a lot of money in places to try and help people, Black and colored, brown, Black people, people of color, I was trying to say, be successful business-wise. We just need to understand how do you access that money, but not just accessing it, having a plan that you're gonna, I'm gonna grow this business, I'm gonna buy this business, and not just going in and saying, I'd like to do this, but having something on paper that shows how you can be successful and get the money to grow a business, to create wealth that you can pass down to the next generation.
Passing down to the next generation is what it's all about. Let's educate ourselves. Like you said, there are opportunities, and it's unfortunate that it took stuff so bad, Junior, if I might say, for stuff to happen, but there's also no problem with capitalizing on these opportunities to make a better way for yourself and for your family. And talking about capitalizing, we have to touch on this, Junior. Bridgeman Sports and Media buying Ebony Media Operations, which I think spoke to so many of us. Because I think like many people, I grew up reading Ebony magazine, right, and Jet magazine, and probably many who grew up in a Black household, right? It was the magazine that was always there, and that's kind of what I looked to when I was trying to grow my career. I wanted to be like the people in those magazines. And as I understand it, even you, growing up, knowing what the magazine meant, and it's impact really, I'd say, on Black America. What's it like now when you got to make that purchase after the company had went bankrupt?
Well, I was sad that they were very sad that they were in the position they were in, and did not want to see it go by the wayside. And as you said, I grew up reading it, and thinking back at that time, if you were of the Caucasian persuasion, you probably wanted to be on the cover of Time. If you were an athlete, you wanted to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But if you were Black and excellent doing anything, you wanted to be on the cover of Ebony. And so those were the things that kind of went through my mind. And I said, there's a generation out there that doesn't understand this. And we got to get them to understand what Ebony meant to so many people. And the name is still, I think, iconic. But there's a number of different ways that I think you need to go with Ebony nowadays. Obviously, magazines are a thing of the past, but there's so many digital avenues that Ebony should be going in. There's 75 years of stories. And some of those stories should be told, whether it's on, Netflix or Hulu's, Amazon's, whatever. They should be told because it's not just the history of Black America, it's a history of America. And, seen through the eyes of, the people that wrote the stories, John Johnson, on and on. And that's what we were trying to protect from being lost and just going by the wayside. And, to have a secure place, which we found out that has every publication of Ebony and Jet going back 75 years. And, now we're in the process of trying to catalog all stories and say whether this was social or entertainment and on and on. But, that's just something that is unbelievable, and you couldn't reproduce that ever again, in this world. So
that's huge. Just talk about history, and I'm so glad you touched on it. It's not just Black history; it's history, right? Like, I know we're in February and celebrating Black History Month, but Black history is American history, right? And it's all integrated, and it's all for us to know about. And again, I just think your career going from professional basketball player to restaurateur to now, owning Ebony and Jet, like, just wow. I feel like there's no, the sky truly is the limit for you. Just exciting. I know you're teaching your children the business as well. Again, getting them caught up into it. And so when all is said at the end of the day, what do you want people to remember most about Junior Bridgeman?
I always go back to, the old, song you used to see and sing in church. And, if you can't help somebody along the way, then your living was in vain. And I think that looking back on it, if you can say you help people make more money, you help people live a better life, you help somebody in a difficult situation, you help somebody feel better about themselves, you inspired somebody. If you can look back and say you did that, then I think what your living was not in vain, and that's what's important. So.
Very, very important. Very good words to end on, but I can't let you go without a fun one. When you look back at the NBA, Junior, which player do you think today most emulates your style of play?
Well, there's a lot of shooters out there, but I would probably say somebody, even though he dribbles better than I did, like a Klay Thompson, somebody that could catch and shoot, somebody that could come off a pick and catch the ball and shoot it. I would. That's what I kind of think, somebody along those lines, like Klay Thompson. Yeah, and I played against his dad. So
yes, so there you go. Look. Stole some of that stuff. We love that. Klay Thompson's a great one. Junior, it's been so much fun. Also, I'm curious, can you ever root for the Lakers, or is that just a team you can't root for, Junior, at all?
No, now it's about, I look at excellence, and, Anthony Davis, knew him, from Kentucky time, and when he was at Kentucky, and so I was happy to see him win, and think he's a great player person. So no, it's not about the jersey anymore. It's just about I pull for the excellence on the court, and like to see that whoever that is do well.
That's good. Words well set up, and we already got people asking. People already interested in you. Do you need writers for Ebony? Look. I like that. People shoot their shot, whether it be on the basketball court or not.
Yeah, we're always looking for talent, just like the NBA. So, I would, contact me, and I'll get you in touch with Michelle D, who's the person in charge of Ebony, and kind of go from there.
I like the look. See, people like shooting their shot, Junior. They're trying to be like you, whether it be on.
No problem with that.
Junior Bridgeman, thank you so much for joining me here on Listening with KNN. Truly enjoyed your time. Best wishes with everything. We will continue to follow you. And again, special thanks to Lloyd Lawton for connecting us. Such a great.
Thank you. Thank you. You're great too. I appreciate being on with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. Have a great one and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining me for this special live stream edition of Listen In with KNN. Oh, you're not too late, because we'll be back this Saturday at 2 p.m. with Sam Bam Cunningham. Yes, we'll talk a little bit Patriots football, so much more USC. We'll talk about college football. We'll talk about Alabama. It's going to be a great show that I promise you won't want to miss. Again, join me back here, live stream edition of the show, 2 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Truly appreciate everyone for tuning into this special edition of Listening with KNN. Again, I was joined by none other than former NBA player Junior Bridgeman, doing lots of great stuff in the business world, and also reviving Ebony and Jet magazine, which just makes me so excited as someone that grew up with that. Again, I appreciate your support so much. Always join in on the show, ask your questions, and we'll be sure to answer them live. All right, have a great one. Stay safe, and I'll see you all this Saturday. Have a great one. Bye, guys.
Follow Kelsey on social media at The Real K Nelson. Catch episodes of Listen In with KNN on YouTube, on air at AM 1340 and 96.9 FM Fox Sports Radio, on Facebook and Twitter, and online at KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Thank you for watching this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN.
You used to hear me on your airwaves or hear me on my hit podcast, but now I'm taking you to the screen. You'll love Elevator Thoughts. We will talk the latest trending in sports. It's game time. What better way to get to know those that visit the show than over some good food and drink? It's time for confessions.